Good evening, Broncos country. I'm Thomas Hall, and we are bringing you a new show. Ron White is my co host, and this is the Orange and Blue View. So, thank you for joining us. I have a show on in Friday morning. So, if you have seen me on that before, you might recognize me. If not, I've been with Mile High Huddle for quite a while as a staff writer and a show called Legends of Mile High. I'd like to introduce Ron White. Can you just give the listeners a little bit about yourself quickly, and then we will jump into some pretty hot off the press content.
Sure. Thank you, Thomas. Hello, Broncos country. This is Ron White, a staff writer for the Mile High Huddle, and I am looking forward to talking our favorite topic, the Denver Broncos. And as Tom mentioned, that there's been some hot off the press news that we want to get to, so let's go ahead and dive right into it.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about the new news that just came out about Sean Payton, and the Broncos have asked to interview Sean Payton, and he is definitely at the top of the list. And so we're going to be talking about that a little bit, and we're actually going to be jumping into the chat to get some comments. I'm sure there's some burning questions out there, so we're going to jump into that as well. Don't forget that you can follow me at Thomas Hall NFL on Twitter and Ron White NFL on Twitter. So Dylan's coming in first. Dylan Von Arks. Hope you're all excited for this new duo. Great things coming. Yeah, thank you, Dylan. I appreciate that as a fellow writer. We are happy to be here, and I think it's going to be a great team to bring you some great content. And go ahead,
I,
Ron.
I and I, I agree, Dylan. Thank you very much. Again, looking forward to bringing the new podcast to you guys with um, exciting content to come. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And Flazify, that's a really cool name. I appreciate it. Flazify coming in with a comment. He says, or she says, I'm not sure. Honestly, this is the most excited I've been since, well, Russ. Laugh, LMAO. Yeah, we're excited too, and it's gonna be fun. So we're gonna about talk about Sean Payton, which is a burning topic. William Cantalano coming in. My God, if we keep up more draft picks for something that blows up, I swear. Yeah, I mean, what do you think, Ron? I mean, we're gonna be talking about Sean Payton, and the biggest question has to be, what is it going to take to get Sean Payton to the Broncos? What are your thoughts about trading away draft picks for a coach?
I'm not a fan of trading away draft picks. The Denver Broncos right now we have limited draft resources as it stands today, and just giving away more capital, right? It would just really hinder the franchise. Um, and of course, with Peyton, right, we would have, of course, one of the highest paid coaches, but then we wouldn't have our first round picks, right? Because it's going to require us giving up at least our first round pick this year and possibly a first round pick next year with maybe some group picks as well within the second or third rounds in subsequent years. So I feel as though that wouldn't be the best move, which is why I am a proponent for getting Jim Harbaugh as our new head coach. And I think right now Jim Harbaugh would be the best option just because he's that hard nosed type of guy, right? He's able to come in, bring in his culture, bring in the way he wants to run his offense. And I feel as though him having that personality would allow Russ to be more immutable and listen and adjust accordingly.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like Harbaugh as well. And I also like that David McGrath is joining us from YouTube, coming in with a super chat. Thank you very much, David. We appreciate that. We appreciate your support, and we'll be looking for your comments if you want to put them in the chat, and we'll discuss them. And here is a comment to begin with. David's good evening, Broncos country, Ron, Tom, and Deacon Scott. Absolutely. Let's not forget that Scott is the one behind the scenes running this stuff for us. Makes it a lot easier on us than trying to search through the comments for all of them and talk at the same time. So thank you for that, David. Appreciate it.
Thank you, David.
So Ron, I'll tell you, I've been thinking about Sean Payton and what it's going to take. And I keep thinking about what it took back in the day to get Gruden to Tampa Bay. And that was pretty costly. And it was only really one team that really wanted him. Now you've got a bunch of teams that are in the Sean Payton sweepstakes What do you, I mean, realistically, do you think it's going to take more than 2 first-round draft choices? I mean,
It
you
could,
mentioned it earlier.
it could, it could, right? It really depends on, you know, how much ball Mickey Loomis wants to play, right, with the Broncos. Now, I know, we have the richest owner, right, in the NFL, so
Yeah,
the money aspect
sure.
is not a concern. It's what are the Saints looking for from a draft perspective, and given someone of Sean Payton's caliber, right, we know what he's done with Drew Brees over the several years, right, with New Orleans, had the New Orleans Saints offense humming, right, all those years. It's going to just depend on what they're looking for in return. And I feel as though, given his caliber, it's going to at least be our first round pick in 2023, and then possibly 2024's first round pick, and then maybe some twos and threes to add. So I'm looking at, and maybe even a few players, Thomas. They could be asking for a few players that we have as well. Now there may be, given our roster and how we've done this year, I'm not sure if, you know, they would be, have the talent to be expendable, but the Saints could be looking for someone maybe like a Justin Simmons or something, right, in the deal. But um, in my mind, that would be kind of the starting point to at least have those straight talks to start.
Sure. And a report just came out after all of the first report about request an interview, and they really made it clear. The Saints made it clear that this is just a discussion about possibly interviewing. There's no contract negotiation. There's no talk about draft picks or anything. So they know that they've kind of got the upper hand in this situation. They know that the teams are going to be clamoring, but I'll tell you, it is a lot to give away to Sean Payton. I think Sean Payton is a good coach. I feel like he left a little bit of meat on the bone, so to speak, when you had a Hall of Fame quarterback your entire career as a coach, pretty much, other than the final year, and you were only able to get the Super Bowl once. They did win that Super Bowl. So, I mean, and it is tough to win a Super Bowl in the NFL. So don't get me wrong that, one Super Bowl, whoop-de-doo, and everybody sees the Patriots winning. And I mean, that was pretty unprecedented, but that's a lot to give up for a coach who had some success, but wasn't an overwhelming success. And on top of it, you have some character concerns that I've talked about in the past that, Bounty Gate, you had him kind of he stepped away, retired when everything was kind of sinking. That's a lot. That's a lot. And I don't think the Broncos should weigh that, in my opinion, weigh those pieces. And right, we got an interview coming up. We're going to watch them interview several coaches. So right now it's just an interview. So we shouldn't get too excited and crazy about what could happen. But that's important to consider, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I see what you're saying. I want to. I guess that's where you and I maybe don't share a brain in the sense that the Bounty Gate issue. I understand it's a concern, um, but again, that was over 10 years ago, right? What we're wanting is to go back to our winning ways. And the last time I checked, I believe Sean Payton's record or winning percentage, I believe, was over 60%. I think it's closer to
Yeah,
65%.
641, I think, if
Hmm.
memory serves.
Yep.
Absolutely. He's a
So
winner
I
for
would,
sure.
right. So I would rather have, not looking at the past, right? I understand those concerns, but we need someone to come in and just change completely change this offense, right?
Sure.
And Sean Payton would do a good job, but again, it's just the draft capital that you're concerned about.
That's right. Yeah, and Phil McLaughlin coming in from Facebook. Phil, I appreciate it. We both appreciate you coming in, showing us some support. He says, "Evening, Thomas, Ron, and Deacon Scott. Congrats on the new show. I really don't want Peyton. Go Broncos." Yeah, I think you're right, Phil. I mean, there is some. I've seen a lot of people, a lot of fans back and forth with whether or not they like Peyton, and Ron and I kind of disagree. I mean, I have Peyton quite a ways down my list, only because I mean, I don't want to give up character for just simply winning. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I think that the Broncos have more options, and if they could land like a Jim Harbaugh, I'd be excited. There's also Dan Quinn out there. It's not only Peyton, and everybody seems to be locked on whether it's Peyton or no, it's not Peyton, but there are other options. So I would hope that they would explore all of them first. And I think that's what they're going to do. But their list is not going to be as long as it was last season. And I don't think some of the familiar names for coaches that you saw with Peyton, the familiarity he had with some of the coaches from the Vikings days and whatnot, I don't know if they're going to get an interview. I think Penner is got his own mind and is going to be, looking at it from a different perspective. So it might be a 6 or 7 list. What are your thoughts on that, Ron?
Yeah, I agree. This is going to be a very thorough search, Thomas. It's going to involve several names, right? Of course, they want to swing big, so we're familiar with, of course, the Peyton and the Harbaughs and Dan Quinn. But don't be surprised to see, right, some newer names out there. Maybe like a Shane Steichen, right, as a candidate. D'Amico Ryan, right, from the 49ers, right? Some of these other folks that they may want to just talk to, right, to kind of feel them out and see what it's like. But, I think they want the more proven coach and just expect to see more focus, right, and more in-depth interviews with the Harbaughs and the Paytons. But I definitely agree. Yes.
Yeah, and Low Mill, thank you for coming in. I appreciate it. We both appreciate it. Says, good evening, lifelong Broncos fan from the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan. Yeah, I mean, I think the winter's probably pretty rough right now. So I don't envy you being there in Michigan. But thank you for the support. Appreciate it. And Michael Ronquillo, an actual Mount Rushmore of Mile High Huddle here. Thank you for coming in from Facebook Stars. Really appreciate that. We are in the middle of talking about Sean Payton and other coaches, especially with the news that just came out. Just came out that they're going to get that interview, and that's going to happen right away. And I think they're going to be pretty fast. But I think you hit the nail on the head, Ron. The Broncos know that they cannot miss, and so I think they're really reluctant to take a chance on a first-time head coach again. They've done that 3 cycles in a row. And I've been on here plenty of times talking on Twitter on my show about how first-time head coaches aren't all bad, and you don't want to just get retread head coaches all the time because those happen to fail more often than they hit. But there are coaches out there that are available that have had a lot of success, and I actually think it's a 2-horse race. If Harbaugh is willing to leave Michigan and take the money, and they are willing to cough up the draft capital for Peyton, I think it's a 2-horse race. But like you said, there are some other options. I mean, we're watching a great coach on the staff right now, Evero. He's done wonders with the defense, even when he had them playing hard through the whole year, even when they had lost half their team, it seems, to injury. So he's a candidate as well. I think really you can boil it down to the top two choices, and then you got Dan Quinn, and then you probably have Evero. And then after that, I think they're going to be very reluctant to take a chance on another first-time head coach, especially when they don't know. I mean, at least Evero has been on the staff, and they know him. They've spent a year with him, so they do have that familiarity.
Yes, agreed. And yeah, Ever will be a great candidate, right? It's just a matter of one wanting to take over the entire team, right? He has prowess on the defensive side of the ball, and that unit's been great all season. But it's just a matter of, does he want that responsibility, right? And that's just what it's going to come down to, at least for him to be willing to listen more and accept this position. But yeah, I agree with you, right? It's who would want this job, right? I think it's kind of the main thing, right? It's, of course, we have Russell Wilson, and everyone can say, of course, he was on a dip this year. So given that, do these prospects find Russell Wilson fixable? Really is the main thing, because of course, yeah, you're going to bring in this person to help coach the entire team, right? All 3 phases, all 3 sides of the ball, if you will, right, need focus. But, let's not forget that the main reason this person is going to come in is to make sure that we have an established culture and to fix Russell Wilson.
So. Yeah, that's the main question. That's the main question on everybody's mind, I think. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence Rivera came in with a comment. Appreciate it. Appreciate your support. I see you on Legends of Mile High in the morning. It's great to see you on this show. Thank you for coming in. And Lawrence says, "What up, guys? Did you see that prayer national anthem again tonight? God bless America." I didn't see it, so I don't know. I was actually I did not watch the game, which I know I'm a big football guy, but I had a lot of things to do this weekend. I didn't get to catch the whole game. I caught the kind of the tail end of it, so I missed it. But I'll say this: there's been some comments in the chat, kind of missed them, but they're talking about Sean McVay. Uh, Sean McVay may leave. There's some options out there. 78 lead head. Oh, cool! Is this a new Mile High Huddle show? Thank you for coming in with that comment. Yes, it is. This is our debut, and this is Ron's debut. Ron is a first timer on the podcast on a podcast. It's he and I are co-hosting this show together. It's going to be a good show. And so, yes, it is a brand new Mile High Huddle show. And we are going to be, during the season, starting to preview the next day's game. So that will be a lot of fun when the season is. But we've got a lot to talk about coming up. We got off season, we've got draft, then we've got training camp. So we are going to have a lot to talk about before the season starts for sure. So yes, new show. So Ron, what do you think about that? The comments about Sean McVay maybe stepping away to see if he really wants to coach anymore? Because that, if he does, that's gonna open up a very, I would say, desirable place for coaches to go as well.
It would. Um, I think with Sean McVay leaving, yeah, it would definitely be um, a desirable place just because you do have, they're 1 year removed from a Super Bowl, right? So you do have, the pieces there with a veteran presence and a good offense that can take you places. So it can definitely be. I feel as though with the Rams, you don't have to, I guess, fix the offense in a way because, just like Denver, they've been rattled by injuries as well. So it would be mostly waiting for folks to come back, maybe beefing up that O line on the Rams. And then I think that would be a very desirable place up there in the NFC West.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely.
New brand new stadium,
Yep,
fairly wealthy owner. I mean,
definitely.
it's there's a lot to like about that. So if he does step away, you got to think that that some of the top guys are kind of licking their chops for that role, because I mean, unless Stafford decides to hang it up, I mean, he's a pretty decent quarterback. Got that Super Bowl win, got the monkey off his back coming, from Detroit.
Mhm.
So that's a desirable spot. So you're going to see several openings, and there's even talk about the other team in LA may have an opening, even though they're in the playoffs, which is mind-boggling to me that they're gonna look, and Peyton. Their rumors are that Peyton may really just want that job, and that's part of the problem with Denver, in my opinion, for these coaches is they want to bring in their own guys. So that could mean that they get rid of Evero. They want more control, which means now George Payton is kind of moved aside or gone altogether. I don't really care for that philosophy because there needs to be checks and balances. There needs to be that overall thought process going into these decisions. And when somebody has the ultimate control, it can the team can get away from them. And I saw that, we saw that as Broncos fans with Shanahan. He had complete control, and you got to see that he started to rely on free agents too much. He wasn't doing a great job in the draft, as it progressed. And that I would rather them focus more on the coaching. So that could be part of the reason why Peyton is seems to have less of a role in this search.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, again, I think that the coaching is paramount. I think the coaching is high on their list, right? They want to be able to. Again, you have to think about how this season how this season kind of played out, Thomas. Right? It's been the whole Nathaniel Hackett era has been just not good, right? As we all know, right? It started off in the first game with the coaching snafus, can't call the timeouts. Of course, we brought in Jerry Rosberg to coach the coach, right? So I think a lot of the emphasis needs to be on getting that right guy to coach this entire team. And you're right. I think part of the problem is if we do have someone new coming in, what do we do about Ejiro Evero? Right. What do we do about the bright spot on the defense? Now, I do think that the defense will still be playing at a high level. It's just, do you want to upset that apple cart, right? And there have been rumblings of, let's bring in Vic Fangio, right? If if Peyton was on staff, or even if John Harbaugh came on staff, right? Because they had some familiarity in their San Francisco days. So it's a lot of different factors that the Walter Penner Group has to weigh. And but again, I think it's experience at the coaching level that definitely does come first. And then also, what do we do with George Payton if this coach wants to assume those GM responsibilities, right? I say that we probably should keep George Payton around because he has a great eye for talent. And then, of course, that new coach would get the final approval or the final say, similar to how John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan work, right? Obviously John Lynch is picking the groceries, but the ultimate approval does go through Kyle Shanahan, right? So maybe having that set up, it's just, based on what happens and how this coach wants to assume their role, I think everything will trickle down from there.
Yeah, let's hope so. Let's hope that, and that's part of the knock on Jim Harbaugh, and you and I both have him high on our list.
Yes.
But he has been at San Francisco anyway, was known to be a little difficult to work with. He wanted more control, all the control, and it kind of rubbed the ownership the wrong way. So there is that, and I think Peyton will want a similar thing. But you know what it all boils down to, and I think you said it, is which coach can come in and get the most out of Russell Wilson, because the Broncos are tied to Russell Wilson for probably 3 years. And I know there's some salary cap finagling that they can do if they cut him and just, have $70 million of dead cap for a year or two or whatever. It's not realistic. So who's going to come in and fix it? So those are the three options. You got Harbaugh, who absolutely did wonders with both Alex Smith and Kaepernick in San Francisco. I mean, he got more out of Alex Smith than future Hall of Fame coach Andy Reid did in Kansas City. So you've got that. You've got Peyton working with Drew Brees, and I know Drew Brees went to a Pro Bowl before he came to the Saints, but it was kind of one of those. He got it because that was the spot that was left. He was competing with rookie Ben Roethlisberger and Trent Green, who threw like 17 interceptions that year. There wasn't a lot. So he did turn Drew Brees into a Hall of Fame quarterback for sure. And then you have Dan Quinn, who's, I think, probably third on their list, who's going to probably bring somebody familiar with Russell Wilson. But then after that, it's all a question mark. So in your mind, what do you think? How much of this coaching search relies on what they can do with Russell Wilson? I think it's a lot.
Yes, definitely, Thomas. It's he is the priority going into this coaching search, right? You can make that argument, because as we know, the offense is just has been bad since the Peyton years, right? And I know the last few years in Peyton Manning, the offense wasn't that great either, but
last year for sure.
Yeah. So we definitely need someone to come in and just fix this offense. And I feel as though that those two can definitely help do that. I see these games and I just watch other teams play, right? Like I was watching some highlights of the Kansas City and and Vegas game today, and I think there was a play. I think it was the ring around the rosy play that the Kansas City Chiefs had going in, and I'm just like, why can't we have that much fun on offense? Like, what is going on? Like,
right.
Andy Reid just spills magic, and Patrick Mahomes just takes off, right? And as a division rival, you kind of get sick and tired of just watching that. So having a coach that can, of course, maybe not be the brainiac mind that Andy Reid has, but has some offensive prowess to come in and change that and help us get back to those winning ways. This would be a very value add for this team. It would help us out tremendously. So,
absolutely. Elias Eli Bernal joining us from Facebook with a comment, and it is, we are not going to get Sean Payton. And then he says, I wish. We could, but the Saints are going to ask for a minimum of 2 first-round draft picks. And you hit the nail on the head, Elias. That's the biggest question. How much will it cost? And the Broncos are already crippled with their draft capital right now. So is Sean Payton worth what they have to give up? And that's the big question. There's no doubt he's a good coach. There's no doubt he can get Russell Wilson to play a much better game. But is it worth it? Now, if they have to go down to their 4th coach on the list, then yes, probably. But is he so much better than, let's say Dan Quinn? Is he so much better that you're willing to trade all that capital or whatever it is to get him? And maybe the Saints will take money. Maybe the Walmart money will reign supreme, and they say, here's a bunch of money. We're not going to give you any picks or players, but we are going to give you a lot of money. So you never know. But is Sean Payton that good compared to the obviously, I don't think he's as good as Harbaugh, but compared to the Dan Quinn or say Evero, who's maybe the 4th down the list, or someone like Jim Caldwell, who has been rumored to be there. I mean, that's my thought. And I think Elias hit the nail on the head. It's going to be costly.
Agreed, Elias. I think, and thank you again for that comment. Yes, it's going to be costly for Payton, regardless of how we slice it, right? It's just how much capital are we talking, right? What do the Saints actually want, in exchange for Sean Payton? Really is the big question. Now, you're right. In my mind, Elias, it's going to be a few of those first round picks. I'm thinking. Again, you have to look at it from the reputation that Sean Payton has built in this league and what he's done with Drew Brees, right? I think that definitely weighs into all of this. And, given that they've been at that level for these years, it's going to cost us quite a bit to get him from the Saints, which is why, it would be good if we can. Now, I know with the Dan Quinns, of course, there's familiarity that's there, right? But it's not sexy, right? I know it's not. It won't get you, pumped up, right? But it really is going to depend on that stabilizing. So what I guess I should say is that Dan Quinn is a stabilizing force, which this team needs, and it's also going to be contingent upon the coaching staff that surrounds Dan Quinn as well, right? There have been talks of bringing Brian Schottenheimer along with him, right, as the OC, right, for Ross, because there's familiarity is there as well. So it really just depends on, again, what this draft compensation package is going to entail. I think that's the big thing.
And we've got another legend of a Mile High coming in. Albert Knoppers. Good evening, gentlemen. He says it's good to have a Saturday show again. Way to go, Mile High Huddle. Yeah, thank you, Albert. It was nice meeting you this summer, or this summerish fall at the game, at the meet and greet. Appreciate you coming in, and we're happy to have this show. I mean, this is the first day. We're gonna feel it out, see how it goes, and it should be a great show. And also, I want to just thank Clinton Watson again. Thank you for the support coming with a super chat. It is very, we always appreciate that. So thank you very much, Clinton. Appreciate it. So we've been really kind of hammering this. And Chad, thank you so much for coming in. Another Orange and Blue View is throwing down. Yes, thank you very much. Orange and Blue View. And that's what it's all about. We are going to give our views. You may not like them. Hopefully they're good, but they're probably going to be different. We definitely have different views already. So Ron and I have already kind of disagreed. So we are going to have some disagreement, but so let's talk about Quinn just for a second. Okay. So we know that Sean Payton and we know that Jim Harbaugh are tops. So let's just talk about Quinn. These are my problems with Quinn. Number one, he has some eye for talent. He was able to bring Kyle Shanahan in as an offensive coordinator. So you got to say he can, but I mean, that's a name that everybody knows, right? So it wasn't like, oh, he found somebody, and brought him up. He had a difficult time getting an offensive coordinator after Shanahan left. And he also had a difficult time with defensive coordinators. And my problem was he had a difficult time finding an offensive coordinator when LaFleur was on staff. So that's my first problem with Dan Quinn, and then obviously everybody talks about it, is his failures. His inability to close out games as the head coach. A lot of that falls on the defense. He's a defensive guy, and those are the two things. Because there's more into coaching than just fixing Russell Wilson and being good at X's and O's. And I've said that for a long time, right? You have to have a good eye for talent for coaching. You put together that strategy, you bring it on the field. Dan Quinn has some question marks, but in your mind, do you think his time away from head coach could have fixed that? And have you seen anything that may make you think that, yeah, he could, on his second go around, he wasn't a failure. He wasn't a failure. He got to the Super Bowl. He wasn't absolute. It wasn't Josh McDaniels, right? His second time around could be really good. Do you think that those two things I talked about, are fixable? And do you think he's kind of fixed them?
That's a good question. I think he's still known just for the defensive side of the ball. So I'm not sure if I can say he's fixed them during his time away. Now, of course, the Dallas Cowboys defense is humming, right? They fly around the ball. He's coached that side up the ball quite well. But again, that's just one side of the ball, right? And although he does have a stabilizing force, will that force be enough, for the offense, for the special teams, right? To get even players prepared for games, and making sure that they're practicing and running the schemes that they should be. I just don't know if he's had time away enough to consider those things, Thomas. But I do think him bringing in the right coaching staff. Now, it really depends on what do we designate as the right coaching staff, right? It's like who's going to be the OC. I mean, if it's Brian Schottenheimer and Dan Quinn, I just don't see. I don't see how we can turn it around probably within the next few years. I'm looking for someone more so like a hot shot OC, right? Mostly like a. Now I know some OCs may not take lateral moves, if you will. They want to do head coach, but then money does talk, right? So we maybe can be able to pay them more to be an OC. Like the Kellen Moores, right? From Dallas, right? That Dallas connection, maybe can bring him in with them. Um, Shane Steichen as well from Philadelphia. So it really just depends on, you know, who he can rely on and who he can bring in, right, to maybe help make some of those decisions. Kyle Shanahan's a unicorn, right? We know what Kyle Shanahan is, what he's done, right? So that was you find genie in the bottle with Kyle Shanahan. But you know, the second time around, will you be able to create some of that Shanahan-like magic? Who will you get as your OC? And then who will be the DC, right? Will you even keep Evero, right? So it's just going to really depend on who he builds around him. And we know, right? Sorry, Scott, the Falcons collapsed in the Super Bowl, right? that wasn't the best. But, it's really going to depend on who all comes around him to kind of maybe build up that entire culture. So,
yeah. Yeah, and you know what? I just saw a comment in here, and I think it was someone named Todd. And I'm sorry I didn't see there. He was talking about Frank Reich, and that is a puzzler to me. When I saw that Broncos had no interest in Frank Reich, really kind of as a head scratcher for me because I liked him. I thought he was I thought he got a raw deal. I mean, the Irsay's tough, tough to work with over there in Indianapolis. I think he had a great eye for coordinator talent. I mean, you got two of them are hot names, and one of them's leading the Eagles. So I think that was a head scratcher for me. And then there's a couple other names out there that I think that they could take a look at that I don't know if they will. And one of my favorites I've said before is Brian Callahan from the Bengals. He's a potential, and I like the quarterback coach for that team. I think he's helped Joe Burrow a lot more than people think, and I think he might be a pretty good offensive coordinator. So there's some options there. I think. I don't know. What do you think? Can you just give maybe your dark horse? Who's your dark horse that they should at least give an interview for?
I've been enamored with Kellen Moore.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kellen Moore has been high on my list for a few years now. Now he's very very creative, um, in the running and pass game, and he has, although Dak has kind of been hit or miss at times, he does have Dak playing at a high level. So I think Kellen Moore would be great and deserve an interview as well. And I'm also with you there with Callahan. I think Callahan has really helped Joe Burrow a lot with this Bengals offense. I think he would also be a great candidate for an interview. So those are my two, I guess, dark horse, um, young up and coming that can maybe just fix this, right? Can turn this ship around because I know people, are still not, or some people don't really want to do first time head coaches, right? But I think someone that has creativity on the offensive side, that has called plays, right, before, and can be, the quarterback whisperer would definitely help. So I think those would be two dark horse candidates that can really turn this thing around.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you, Kellen. I do not. I would stay away from Kellen Moore. I don't know what it
Okay.
is. I mean, not at this. I mean, I think he will be a head coach, and he'll probably be a good head coach someday.
Mhm.
It's the intangibles that I talk about. It's not X's and O's. It's other things that I don't know if he's ready for the job. And I could be completely wrong. And I have been before. I just think Kellen Moore is going to be one of those guys that comes in his first year, he kind of struggles. And then his second go around, he might be pretty good. Uh, he needs to learn a little bit more about, everything else that goes into a head coaching job. And I actually don't know if his offensive style would be a good fit with Russ. So for me, I think Kellen Moore would be way down the list for the Broncos. For another team, if he came into a team and brought some experienced coordinators with him and had a already established good quarterback ready to go that's been playing well, then I think he could be successful. But most coaches could be successful in that. But yeah, I'm not high on Kellen Moore. So Phil McLaughlin is coming back in from Facebook. Appreciate your
Thanks,
comment.
Bill.
And first Haba, then Steich, and then Reich. Yeah, and we don't know. We don't know about the other two, right? I mean, we know that Harbaugh is definitely on their radar, but we don't
Yes.
know about the other two. I think Steichen. Hopefully, I'm
Steichen.
pronouncing that right.
Yeah,
Steichen
it's
is
Shane
is
Steichen. Yeah.
is on their list, but Frank Reich's not. They kind of came out and said they're not going to really interview him. So, yeah, I think, yeah, it's going to be an interesting process to say the least.
Mhm.
And I think they already know who they want.
I think so as well, Tom. Again, thank you, Phil. Of course, I'm in agreement with you there with Harbaugh. Steichen is interesting, just because of the Philly offense. I'm not sure. Of course, he is deserving of an interview, right? The way he has this Philly offense this year, um,
Yep.
it would definitely be deserving of an interview. I just don't know if that particular offense would work. There are parts of it I can see working, right, with the run pass options and Jalen Hurts with design runs and such. I mean, that may help Russ out to a degree, right? I can see that. Um, and then Frank Wright. I'm shocked, Thomas, right, that he
Yeah.
didn't get a look before for Denver because, again, with Indy, I mean, he was given next to nothing, right? All the turnover at quarterback, and he still has a winning record in Indy. Given
Yeah.
that what he was able to do. So I think he, again, not probably the preferred candidate for most, but I really think that Frank Reich can come in and help out. And it may be, depending on who the head coach is, right? He may can come and even be an OC, right? It just really, depends on, kind of how who they hire, right? And what the coach is looking for from an offensive schematic perspective. But I think Frank Wright would be tremendous, right?
Well,
What
and
he's able to do.
think about Frank Reich's offense. I mean, it is already West Coast offense. He has a
Yes.
lot of already similar concepts that they've already learned in this offense. I mean, we're not going to watch the Broncos completely tear down the offense. I mean,
Right.
they're going to make changes, but for the most part, keeping that continuity would be something really good. So for me, it's a head scratcher. I think it's doing a disservice by Penner not at least interviewing him. But again, I mean, they can only do so many interviews, and you never know. And Lawrence Rivera, I mean, you've got a great point here. Head coach Rich Bisaccia, DeMarcus Ware. I don't know if he's going to be the DC, but Bisaccia was what he did for the Raiders last season. I'm surprised he's not on more people's radar. I mean, that's a candidate for me, and I'm not a Raiders guy. Don't get me wrong. Like I don't want their leftovers, kind of, so to speak. But he's a good coach, and they were wrong by letting him go. I think so.
I think for Versace, I mean, if he was open to doing special teams for Denver, I'm down. Right. I'm not sure. I guess I'm not sure on the head coaching front. I mean, you're right. Given all the Raiders went through that year, and him to kind of turn their ship and even get them to the playoffs, right, was tremendous. But I'm just not sure if he kind of be that guy to really turn this ship around. And again, I don't know if Russ would be the focus. Again, we can maybe keep some of those same schemes and such depending on who the OC is, but I don't think they would be too much of a culture change. At least that's how I see it if we were to look at Rich Bisaccia.
Yeah, Phil McLaughlin's throwing out another name, Ben Johnson. That's another name that's going to be on people's radar. I have not heard anything about interest from the Broncos for Ben Johnson. OC for Detroit, I haven't heard. I haven't heard anything. It's been radio silence on that, and maybe it will heat up after the game on Monday. You might see a lot more rumors coming out there, but I haven't heard it, and I think he could be a good candidate for sure. I just don't know. And we got George Fox coming from Facebook. Thank you very much. And he says, I'm not a fan of Quinn. I'm for another first-timer with a new outlook on offense. Denver Broncos for life. Mile High Huddle for life. Yeah. What do you think? What do you think about a first-timer?
Thanks, George, for your comment. I appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in. Again, a first-timer, I'm okay with. It's depending on who they have surrounding him. Like, again, it all goes back to the coaching staff for me. And, the creativity on offense, what scheme this, and of course I want to be an offensive guy. Let's start there and foremost. I want the first timer to be an offensive guy. I feel as though obviously we missed on Hackett. And we definitely need someone fairly young, right? To come in and just turn this entire offense around. Again, some of the names we mentioned, like the Steikens and the Kellen Moores, would be great. Again, there's some of the ones that are more veteran, like the Frank Reichs, that would also be good as well. I think you would have to see the dynamic, right, between this new offensive-minded first-time head coach and Russell Wilson, right? Can they develop an offense that would have a mixture of both, right? What Russ can do well, right? And I think those conversations would need to happen, of course, those drills and such. So, but again, I'm down for a first-time head coach, preferably offensive.
For my money, it would be I would go to the Eagles and take their offensive coordinator Gannon over Ben Johnson, only because when he started to take on more of a role, offensive coordinator role, as the year progressed last season, and what he's done with Jalen Hurts this season, he really improved Hurts and that offense, and that's a proven track record right there. I think I said the wrong name. Sorry, slip of the tongue. But the offensive coordinator there for the Eagles, he has proven track record already. As a first timer, I'd take a chance on him before I take a chance on Ben Johnson. And before we go on, I just want to give a shout out to another kind of a Mount Rushmore of Mile High Huddle commenters. Michaela Israel's coming in. I agree, James. The defense was good, not elite, and I think she's talking about the Broncos defense. And I've talked about this. So I like Evero. I like what he did. I think he's a really good coach, and I think he's going to have a future in this league as a head coach. But that was my knock. There wasn't enough big impact plays, not enough turnovers to create it. And that has something to do with probably being more conservative the opposing offense being a little more conservative. So there needs to be something a little bit more, in my opinion, on the defensive side to get them to elite status. So if the new coach that came in and wanted to bring somebody else in and got rid of Evero, I would be upset, but I wouldn't be like totally upset because he did a great job, but he didn't get it to elite status.
Yes, but at the same time, I think the defense was great, but I guess the big thing is, we weren't scoring any points. And I feel as though you can never really be, of course, we had the 2000 Ravens, right? We also had the 85 Bears, right? You can make a case that those defenses were pretty elite. But I think if you have top 5 caliber, top 7, 8 caliber defenses, and if you have the same on offense, top 5, top 10 offense, that should be enough. You should be a playoff contender automatically.
Absolutely.
And we had, I'm not sure what we rank now defensively. I think we're still top 10,
10th.
but I'm not sure. 10th, right at 10. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, we're
So
about 10th in yards and points both.
yards, points allowed. Okay. So given that, if our offense was top 7 or 8, right, we can be vying for a wild card spot, right?
Sure.
And I'm not too concerned on us identifying or thinking that the defense is elite or not. It's plenty good enough, right? There was a stretch this season where we held a lot of teams, 18 points or below, right? I think there was a stat out there saying that I think if the Broncos had won, what is it, like 12 games, I think it would be like 10-2.
Yeah.
If they scored more than 18 points,
yeah.
right? So
yeah. You gotta factor in the game, how it went and everything.
Yeah, some of the complexion of the game. I agree.
Sure. I got to get to Michael Ronquillo, man. Michael, thank you so much for all the support that you give every Mile High Huddle show. Appreciate it. Comes in with a comment. Awesome. Great show tonight on the Orange and Blue View. First episode, Thomas Hall and Ron White. Go Broncos. Thank you for the support, Michael. We appreciate you being in here with these shows all the time, watching them, supporting us. You are definitely one of the Mount Rushmore. So thank you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
So, all right. We've kind of beaten these coaches up a lot. What I would say, what I think about, so say ESPN is right, and the Broncos are the 6th most desirable location. That means they're not going to get number 1. They're not going to get number 2 unless money talks, right? So we're talking about getting down to the 4th, 5th, 6th option. At that point, it's a first-time head coach, or it's somebody like Jim Caldwell. Now, if I had to choose Jim Caldwell over Kellen Moore, or I would do it. I know you're shaking your head. I see you shaking your head. You don't like Jim Caldwell. I like Jim Caldwell for a couple reasons. One, he's got good experience. He has had success in the league. He was the first one to really turn the Detroit Lions around. I know they're getting turned around now with Dan Campbell. Jim Caldwell came in and completely changed the Detroit Lions. These are the Detroit Lions that have only won one playoff game since 1957. So he came in and made them a contender. That's what I like about him. I also think he's got an offensive mind, and I think he can scheme a plan to help Russell Wilson. And maybe it's not a perfect fit. Maybe his offense isn't a perfect fit, but I think he can come in, stabilize the team, and actually turn it around and make it a contender, make it a winner, because he's done it with the Detroit Lions. And we have to face facts. The Broncos have been bad, have been very bad for 6 years, and somebody needs to do something. Gio Vandermark, appreciate you coming in, bringing up Rosberg. He says, like I said, how about Rosberg? Tell me your thoughts, Ron, on Rosberg. We got about 10 minutes left to go. Let's nail the last few coaches here and give our opinions on what we think. And Rosberg is an intriguing name.
Yes, and thank you, Gio. And before I answer Gio, I want to get back to Caldwell. For me, it's a no thank you for Caldwell. Just because again, there may be some elements of his offense that could work, but the Lions still didn't really. I think they had one playoff season, one playoff year. So for me, it didn't really move the needle. And I think his offense or parts of it wouldn't really fit with kind of the direction of the league right now. If I were to my first timer, as I mentioned earlier, would be um, Kellen Moore one, and then Shane Steichen from Philly two. And then answering Gio's question here about Rosberg, I think he deserves the interview, right? I think he deserves a shot because what he's done in the short time as the interim head coach has been good, right? This is what this team has been missing. They needed a dynamic change, a change in the culture, right? So what he's done to get them ready for that Kansas City game last week was very good. And his hard-nosed attitude and firing Butch Berry and Dwayne Stukes when he came in was also needed. So I think he's one that would definitely change the culture and make sure accountability is there as well. So I'm open for and Rosberg, but just a matter of if Rosberg wants to take the job, right? We pulled him out of retirement. It's just a matter of if he wants to deal with head coaching or not.
Yeah, that's just it. I mean, Rosberg, I love what he did. I mean, he came in, he was just a consultant. He's sitting there helping with game planning, right? He's just a, kind of a consultant role, came in to help with those things. And he saw what was going on with the team. And he came in and was decisive and made decisions that positively affected the team. And he got them to play well, even though they had a fired head coach, nothing to play for. They could have just given up and they didn't. So I like that about Rosberg. But he doesn't, he's a kind of a guy that doesn't want it. He doesn't seem like he loved doing the head. I mean, he loves being in the head coaching role right now, but he, like you said, he's retired. I don't think he wants it. They may give him an interview, just to get his thoughts or whatever, think about what he saw with the team. Maybe I think they could do that anyway. I just I don't think he wants it. I mean, I think Scott said he's a 67-year-old who had just retired, never really been offensive coordinator anywhere. I think he should have got his shot, 10 years ago,
Years ago, yeah.
probably. Right. And I just don't think
hmm
he wants it. I don't think he's going to, I don't think he's in the running, and I don't think he wants it. He might have, want to stick around for some other role, maybe, but I think he probably wants to go back into retirement. So I don't think he's a really solid option.
Yeah,
I
and
just don't
maybe
think.
yeah, and maybe not as a head coach, right? I mean, depending on if Harbaugh becomes the head coach, right, he may stick around for special teams, right?
It's
It,
possible.
possibly, right? It just kind of depends on really what Rosberg wants to do, and of course, if someone else comes in as head coach. So yeah, I see what you're saying. I agree.
Yeah. It's going to be very interesting to see who they actually bring in, because there's a lot of names getting thrown around. I wrote up there was a rumor about Eric Bieniemy as a candidate that they might interview. There's a few others on there, but it's not going to be a 15-person. Like there's easily 15 people that they could interview, but they're probably going to interview 6 or 7, and that's it. And I don't think I think there's going to be, and I think we're seeing it with Frank Reich. I think they're making the decisions of who they're just, they're saying, yeah, I'm just going to exclude that. We know who we really want, and these are what we're gonna get, and we're gonna go after these people. So it's gonna be a short list, and it's gonna start on Monday. Really,
Yes.
it's gonna get hot, and the nice thing about having the Waltons, they've got the money to do it. So if money talks, they're going to get the person that they want, right? They're
Right.
going to get it. So,
Yes.
all right, Ron, any final thoughts? We're going to start wrapping up this show. We beat these coach candidates to death here. Any final parting thoughts for our show for the future? What we're going to talk about, and how this is going to go? Anything?
I'm just hoping that we look to do a thorough search when it comes to this head coaching candidate. Looking forward to seeing how the game plays out tomorrow, right? Although doesn't really mean anything, but it would be nice to see, kind of how we close the season. And then once we get this head coach, right, it would be nice talking about all the free agency moves and draft. and such. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into the off season, which is the best part, in my opinion, of football. So
Well, I'll tell you what, we're gonna have a lot to talk about. We're gonna have a lot of optimism probably. I just hope
sure.
that optimism isn't gonna be the optimism that we had starting this season and it fell flat with some
Yes.
losing. And we need as Broncos fans, everybody out there, all the comments. Thank you so much for all the Broncos fans coming in here. The Broncos owe it to you guys and us to have a good team. This is a great franchise. It is a winning franchise in the
Rival
past,
franchise.
and now it's time to bring that back. And it starts on Monday. You're going to see it on Monday. Phil McLaughlin coming in with our projection on tomorrow's game. Final comments. Thank you for the support, Phil. Ron, you say what yours is. I'll say what mine is next, and then we'll wrap up the show.
Yeah, for the Chargers, it's it's one of those opponents we tend to do well, and I think we split. I think over the past few years, but I'm predicting a Broncos victory to close it
Nice.
out.
All right.
As far as a score, I think it might come down to a McManus field goal. So I'm thinking 23-20
Nice.
is where I'm headed.
Right on.
Russell throws for a few tutties, and we get the win. I mean, the Chargers are in the playoffs, right? So they may be sitting a few starters and such anyway. I'm assuming so. But yeah,
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, and Michael, thank you for coming in for that last Facebook star. Appreciate it, man. You are the man. We appreciate it. Definitely appreciate the support.
thank you.
So for me, the Chargers, I'm actually, I think the Chargers, depending on, it all depends on the Baltimore game, right? If the Baltimore, how that goes, the Chargers may rest their starters, and then basically it's backups on backups because the
Yep,
Broncos have had so many dang injuries that they don't have all their starters anyway.
yep,
My prediction in the Mile High Roundtable was very much driven by the fact that our fellow colleague Zach Kelberman is one game ahead of me in the roundtable record. So I had to go the opposite of what he said. In my heart, I want the Broncos to win, but I also want to go for the win. I'm not going to play to lose. So that's why I went with the Chargers. I think it was 20-17, but I think the Broncos, with how Rosberg has got them playing, could very well pull out the victory. So again, thank you, Michael. Appreciate the support. And I am Thomas Hall, and this is Ron White with me. Scott in the background. Say thank you to him. You can follow us, Thomas Hall NFL, Ron White NFL. And with that, just want to say thank you for joining our very first show,
thank you
the
guys.
Orange and Blue View. And we will see you next Saturday with some more great content. So thank you very much.
All right, thanks everyone.